My name is Stacey. I work with Dr. Fran. Have worked with him for 4.5 years as his internal accountant and the HR benefits administrator. He just got through speaking to you about picking the right people, and we also like to really maintain the right people at our businesses. Part of that is the Virtue Bonus Eventus, Good Fortune, remembrance of important positive events. At today's dental, we recognize our staff on birthdays and the anniversary date of each employee and their employment. We do this in a number of ways by celebrating with birthday cakes, cards, take a little break, enjoy that time with that person, and also personal emails that Dr. Fran is exceptional at delivering to each and every one of us. And here's Howard.
Thank you, Stacey.
You're welcome.
I'm a lucky man to have Stacey, and she's taught me a lot about financing, accounting, all those kinds of things. Before we talk about staff a little bit more, I want to go back and explain our model. Our model, which was actually given to me by Alan F. Thornburg, who's the founder of AFCO, a brilliant man, who basically started selling dental practices when I was born. I kid you not, he has sold several $1 billion of practices. But he explained to me how by having 2 receptionists for 2 hygienists for 2 assistants for a dentist is the most profitable deal. And one of the things Alan was explaining to me, so even though we have 4 receptionists, 4 hygienists, 4 assistants, we're just having 2 of the same model. You could, if you had running a big army clinic or something, you could have, just keep stamping out that big model. But back to the model. When you have the problem with hygienists, their dilemma is when they get cancellations, broken appointments, no-shows, and that's their dilemma. Whereas the assistant's dilemma is emergencies, toothaches, walk-ins, temporaries falling off, things like that. And when you have 1 assistant to 1 hygienist, those 2 happening statistical occurrence events, the variance, the standard deviation of that event, is not very well matched up. Each time you go out, the variance of one of these 4 having a walk-in or an emergency or someone wanting to come in early for a crown seat or something like that equals the hygienist having a broke appointment. And we talked earlier about we only hire hygienists who were cross-trained as dental assistants before and were so passionate about dentistry that after assisting for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, they went into hygiene, because then they can immediately fall back to their dental assistant position and take an emergency patient, take a PA in a bite wing, find out what's going on. So cross-training is imperative. That's another thing about receptionists. Our lead check-in and check-out, Dawn, was our dental assistant for 6 or 7 years before we put her up front, which is so fantastic because the assistant's running behind. She can see the patient. She can take the hygienist next, seat the patient, take bite wings. So having people cross-trained is imperative in any organization. But back to employees, as Stacey was talking about, knowing what you're good at is not quite that important because most people know what they're good at. But your ego, oftentimes, you don't focus on what you're not good at. And I simply knew HR was important. I knew it was imperative. I've always taken it extremely serious. But I learned early on that my vice president, Lori Zalowski, my director of finance, Stacey, that these people were far better at reading employees. I also think, healthcare is 98% women employees, whereas mining is 99% men, construction's 94% men, agriculture is like 96% men. I think I might be better at picking males. There might be something more to women picking women. I'm not sure. There's so many fine small details and the difference and how they behave and picking them. But picking employees is everything. And you need to know your employee turnover formula. Take a time period, say 2000 minus 2005 divided by your 2,000 employees. How many employees did you have? Let's say you had 10. You come back 5 years later, there's only 5 of them. 10 minus 5. You're running a 50% turnover. Now, the United States of America, the average, there's 280 million people, 100 million homes, and about 100 million people have a job. And basically, the average employee in America holds your job for 4 years. And what's the most romantic about that is this is 2005. Remember, it was Henry Ford 100 years ago that noticed employee turnover first. And Henry Ford said, if we're going to mass produce a car, people are going to have to get very good at their job. And back then, the Irish were the largest wave, and they were like 12% of the population at the time. And it was just so common that when people came in from the farm fields to the big cities to get manufacturing jobs, they'd work there for 2 or 3 months, get mad, get in a fight, get hacked off of the boss, quit, go drink for a week, and then go find a job somewhere else. The turnover was incredible. In fact, in Henry Ford's time, the average manufacturing job person held their job, and you're not even going to believe this, and I shouldn't even be telling you because you won't believe it, but it was only about 4 months. And Henry Ford initiated the $5 day. And every time I see anyone mention the $5 day, they miss the whole business point. They always use it that, oh, you should pay your employees more. Henry Ford's real successful, and he paid his employees more. Well, he paid them more for what? What was his gain? Just that he was a nice guy and wants to pay his employees more? No, he said, if I pay these guys $5 a day, they're not going to quit. And, when you work on an assembly line, the first 3 or 4 months, you hardly know what's going on. You're going to have to work there for a year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. And here's the most romantic thing about Henry Ford, pure genius. Instituted the $5 day. His average employee turnover went to average employee 4 years. And it would take the country 100 years before the average worker held their job for 4 years. I mean, talk about, it's one thing to be a year ahead of your time or 2 years ahead of your time. I know Judith and I were high as a kite that we were the first. There was 1 million dentists on the planet, 6 billion people, 1 million dentists, and we were the first to have a message boards on Dental Town. We thought that was really cool, but only a year later, Mike Maroon had one. 2 years later, the American Dental Association had one. So we were ahead of our time a year or two. Henry was ahead of his time a century. This guy was bona fide genius. And you need to track your employee turnover because patients feel very eerie when they come in, and every time they come in, it's a different hygienist, it's a different assistant. Go back to those examples of when people go to Amico transmission because it's clean, you're in uniform, warranty, and they won't go downtown because it's, barbed wire, Doberman pinchers, graffiti, and trash on the sidewalk. People don't know what a good root canal should contain. They don't know that you should have sodium hypochlorite. They don't know what sealer you should use. They don't understand that lateral and vertical condensation's better than Sargenti. Or they don't understand all these things. And one of the things that gives them so much trust is when they come in your office and, and they're having a problem, but they've been seeing Jan every 6 months for 15, 16, 17 years, and they have a long relationship with her, and they feel very comfortable asking questions. So many new patients have come in, and I've asked them, so why did you leave? Well, he did this crown, and it took him forever to seat it. It took like an hour, and he had to re-impress and do it again, and it still doesn't feel right. And I was going to ask my hygienist when I went in 6 months to check it, and I went in there. She doesn't even work there anymore. I figure, she was a really great person. She probably wasn't. She probably had problems with the dentist too, and I just didn't feel comfortable. Feel comfortable going back there. So whatever it takes to slow down employee turnover is imperative, and it begins with picking them. You have to know how to pick them. The first law of customer service is satisfaction equals the perception of what is happening right now at this appointment versus what I expected. I walked in, I expected Christine to be my hygienist because she was the last 5 times. When I went over after I was done to get my filling done, I expected it to be Jan. And we try to keep people with the same hygienist, the same bat station, the same bat channel, the same bat time, the same assistant. If this assistant was there when she prepped the tooth for a crown, let's try to make sure that assistant's the one who seats the crown. When patients request certain assistants, doctor, staff, we really try to always accommodate that. And the second law of customer service is, remember with humans, that it's hard to play catch up once you're behind. Once you get off on the wrong track with humans, it's very hard to turn them around because it doesn't have to do with logic. It has to do with feelings and emotions. And I want you to ask yourself, each one of your staff members, each one you give money and they destroy capital and they cost you money, or you give them capital and they create more wealth and capital and they make you money. So if every single one of your employees is creating wealth, you're going to be a profitable business. If every one of your employees is destroying wealth, you're going under. And, look at sports. Does everyone on your team dive for the ball? How hard are they playing? Does everyone on your team play to win? It's amazing watching professional sports, the way football, the way they'll dive for these balls knowing they're going into a wall or bleachers. I've always found it stunningly amazing when these wide receivers will go up for a catch and they'll lift up their arms, expose all their ribs, knowing that some guy's running 40 miles an hour at him and with a helmet on his head. And they'll take the pain, they'll take the suffering because they're playing to win. And you got to ask yourself, is everyone on your team playing to win? When we go back to consumerism, what Henry Ford was a genius of mass production. Ray Kroc at McDonald's was the genius of a service. And ask yourself his checkpoint. Look at, go through it. Availability. How available are you to your patients? Accessibility. Are you hard to get into? Are you hard to find? Do you always have to give long instructions? Do you always have to send everyone a MapQuest? How come nobody ever asked for a MapQuest to find a McDonald's? You just go up to any major street, go down to any major intersection, and you only have to go 1, 2, 3, 4 miles, and there it is. How come you're in the 3rd floor of a medical dental building? You, quote, save money, no one can find you. You know how many times patients are trying to make their appointment, they're trying to find you, and they're in the wrong building, they're 20 minutes behind, they say, oh, forget it. And they don't even call you. Extended hours, evenings and Saturdays. And this is tricky because if you extend your hours, here's a trade-off. Who comes first, your patients or your staff? And I always say the staff comes first, treat them well, they'll be good to your patients. But if the patient's always right, you'll demoralize your staff because patients are wrong. Patients, you get the full range of patients, everywhere from the perfect little nun to someone board certified crazy. And so if you extend your hours, evenings, Saturdays too much, you'll start impinging on your staff's lifestyle, and then they're not going to be happy, and they're going to burn out and fry. I know a lot of offices that are Saturdays just have a Saturday crew. It's a separate crew. They have a hygienist on Saturday who only works Saturday, and she stays home with her kids during the week, and she only wants to work Saturday for 2 reasons. She wants the money, but she also tells me that if she's there, the kids always come to her, and the husband does interact, but she loves being gone for Saturdays because it forces the husband to change the diapers, feed the kid, interact with them. Otherwise, the kid's just going to be, the dad's going to be a no-show. Do you take panographs? Do you have financing options? I mean, look at panos. Why do you send people out for a panograph when you can get an x-ray machine in your office on a lease where the lease payment is about 1 to 3 panos a month and you're referring out 10 panos a month? It's a bad business decision. It's a bad finance decision, but it's not convenient. Can you imagine going to McDonald's now? Yeah, I'd like a hamburger. Okay, sir, first, though, I'm going to have to write you a prescription. You need to run down the street to the butcher and get some meat and bring it back. Then we'll cook it up for you. And then, oh, by the way, you wanted lettuce on there? Well, there's a nice produce stand a block away. Here's another prescription and a referral for some produce. And yada, yada, yada. I mean, you want to go to McDonald's and get the whole thing right there. Financing options. In the United States of America, if it costs over $1,000, 90% of the time it's finance. Visa, American Express, MasterCharge, GMAC financing makes more money than GM, the car company. Do you realize that in the auto sector of society, we have 62 vertical sectors of the economy, and if we just track profit dollars, there's more profit dollars in financing the cars. Their second most profit dollars are from insuring the cars. The third most profit dollars, believe it or not, are actually from parts and service. And fourth is actually profit dollars from selling the original car. So remember that financing is imperative for 9 out of 10 purchases. And we don't have financing. That's another thing. So many offices walk in there and say, okay, you're going to need 2 crowns, 2 fillings, a type 3 perio cleaning, and a root canal, and your total is $3,000, and I need that right now, all in 20s and 50s and 100s. And only 1 in 10 people can say, sure, here's the money, no big deal. The other 9 out of 10 need financing. You know how nice it is to say, when you're adding up this treatment plan, go ahead and give me your Social Security number because I'll give you some finance options. And then when you add up the treatment plan, get all ready to present it, but you run it through Care Credit before, and then you walk in there, Mary, we can do this whole treatment, and it's going to cost you $189 a month for 5 years, and that's so different than saying, give me $7,000 right now. Emergencies. We know when these patients want to be seen today, they want to be seen today. And if you say, no, I can't see it till tomorrow or next week, they'll book that appointment just in case. But then they're going to open up the yellow pages and call every single person they can till they get in that day. And then when the person doesn't show up next week, you say, that little deadbeat pig. He just made that appointment a week ago and he didn't show up. Well, he didn't show up because you didn't ask for that and you gave him something they didn't want. Beautiful cosmetic dentistry. You got to be careful in dentistry when supply and demand. When 88% of the supply of dentists are men and 82%. 18% are women, that's growing rapidly, but 82 out of 100 are men, but 89 out of 100 appointments are made by females. So you have 82% men trying to address 89% females, and you have to understand cosmetic dentistry, and you have to see it through the eyes of women. I mean, if I have 3 pairs of shoes and my wife has 200 pairs of shoes, if I get ready in the morning in 3 minutes and my wife takes an hour, I never understood that. I'm a 2, she's a 10. I'm a 2, I can get ready in 2 minutes. She's a 10, and it takes an hour. They're far more into this. All of my dental work is gold because I'm smart and I know that gold is the only dentistry I did 20 years ago that still looks great today is all my gold work. I don't want any porcelain, chipping, cracking. I call all of that porcelain stuff an aesthetic health compromise. These are things women do to themselves at the expense of their long-term health because they prioritize beauty above almost anything else, because women see beauty as a source of power. Men see power from money, muscle, title, rank. Napoleon Bonaparte, who conquered a large part of Europe, said, a man will risk his life for a medal or a ribbon, but money, that's not a big deal. And he loved to fight armies that were paid mercenaries. He said they have no passion, they give up, they run. He says, but my men are fighting for ribbon, honor, and valor, and a man will risk his life for ribbons and valors and medals, and they don't fight for money. And that's why you don't want staff that they don't like the work. Work is not the reward. They're only there for the money. You find those people and you get rid of them because they demoralize the whole team. Same thing with in-office prescriptions. Now, go non-narcotic because you don't want people breaking in your office looking for Vicodin or Percodan. You also don't want staff dipping into it and get addicted. I've seen this 100 times. And even the dentist himself. It's too tempting for you, especially if you have migraines or back pain or headaches, to sit there and say, my back really hurts, I'm going to pop a Vicodin, and the next thing you know, you're eating 20 of them a day. But talk about antibiotics. I'm across the street from the Guadalupe Indian Reservation. I mean, I got burned a couple of times where someone come in with pericornitis. I didn't want to pull it. I wrote them a script of antibiotics, told them to come in the next day. And they came in, 3 days later, and they're almost into a Ludwig's angina situation, scared me to death. When I see someone in there, she's a little old lady. Well, she doesn't want to go stand in line at Walmart for half an hour or Walgreens and all that kind of stuff. Give them the antibiotics right there. They're not that expensive. Same thing with little boys from Guadalupe. You know this 17-year-old boy with P-Core on 17 and 32. He's not going to go. You can say, oh, you can't do it till tomorrow. He'll come back tomorrow. And you could have a serious infection on your hand. But when you just dispense the antibiotics right there and right on the envelope, this is what you need to take. Same thing with pain meds. They don't get the pain med filled. They have a lot of pain. Why not just give them a little package of some 400 milligram ibuprofen, tell them to take one every 4 to 6 hours, yada, yada, yada. Consumerism, get your FAGD and your MAGD. 50% of physicians got their diplomat. And I always find it so bizarre that here we have 750,000 physicians, and half of them went on to become a diplomat, and the other half didn't. And you could cut them in half. Is the half going for it and the half who don't care? Yet I've never heard a patient, a consumer, a family member, I've never heard one person in the public, I'll say, well, who's your doctor? They'll be talking about their gynecologist or their obstetrician or whatever, and I say, are they a diplomat? And they're like, what do you mean? And it's like, unbelievable. I mean, I can't tell you how the consumer market, they all base it on consumerism, not facts, knowledge. I wouldn't go to a physician who didn't get a diplomat. Right here in Phoenix, it's unbelievable among the endodontists even and the oral surgeons. I mean, maybe only 20% of them went on to get their diplomats. Like, come on, you're going to be an endodontist your whole life, your entire life. And the huge, awesome ones like Brad Gettleman in town and Joseph Dufkin, sure, they got their diplomat. I mean, if you put it there, they'll jump over it. And they're going for it 24/7, 365.25 days a year. And, same thing when your referrals. I'd get the diplomats. I mean, you got 3 oral surgeons to pick from, pick the diplomat. That's no different than you. You're going to be a dentist your whole life, and you're not even going to get your fellowship in the Academy of General Dentistry with the prestigious AGD or your mastership in the Academy of General Dentists. There's 140,000 dentists in the United States and Canada. Only 1,000 got their MAGD, 12,000 got their FAGD. I think about 30,000 are in the process of earning it. But just go for it. So you can learn more variety of procedures: orthodontics, oral surgery, periodontics, pedo, endo, pros, oral path. And you know what? Some of the greatest people like implantology, who do you think of? Brandmark, Carl Misch. Carl Misch was a prosthodontist first. And understanding the prosthodontist, getting the bite, the clearance, vertical dimension, all these things, Carl told me, were paramount in him becoming the #1 person in implantology the world over. It's called cross-training. It's like my boys. My boys live to wrestle. They've been wrestling all since they were 5. They're fantastic. But they do cross-country simply to cross-train for their 3rd round of wrestling. You know, they're doing that painful cross-country because it's their strategic advantage. I mean, they can go into the 3rd round. They might be down 5-2. And if the other guy's leaning over and he's trying to catch his breath, and my boys got their breath, they have their win, and they're just thinking in their head what they need to do next. And then now their opponent's at a disadvantage. And, you know, I learned more about temporomandibular disorders from orthodontics. And when I see some of these TMJ people, and I just think they're in completely right field, they've never done one case of ortho. So, you know, you learn a lot about TMD from doing ortho. Oral surgery and perio surgery, I mean, come on. I mean, your oral surgery is a massive cross-train for periodontal surgery. And if you get good at oral surgery on removing a wisdom tooth, you know how easy an implant is up front? I mean, basically the hardest thing about a wisdom tooth is accessibility. You can't see it. You have to visualize it. Every time I've ever had an associate get stuck on an extraction, I go in there, and rule #1 is 100 times out of 100, I can't even see what they're doing. The flap's not large enough. I have to extend the flap. I have to retract the gingiva larger, the periosteum, and then as soon as I can see it, then even the associate watches, oh, okay, that's what, there's your purchase point, get it out in 2 seconds. So cross-train, learning about endo. I mean, you know how much endo is endo-perio, how much perio is perio-endo. Learning endo makes you understand perio more. Learning perio makes you understand endo. So cross-train all over the board. And even if you're not going to be a focus factory and master implantology, it still is extremely beneficial to go through the Misch Institute and learn how to sync, and go ahead and sync maybe 15, 20, 30 root forms in your lifetime. And that's what will give you the knowledge and the confidence about selling them, presenting them, understanding them. In fact, I'll have to tell you one of my hidden secrets is before I went to the Misch Institute, I don't know what it was, University of Missouri, Kansas City, I don't know if it was my early experience with them, but I was totally against sinus lifts. I thought they were not predictable. I didn't like them. I thought it was some type of a Russian roulette. This is going back to 1987 to about 1992. And when people would say, what about implant? I'd say, well, you know, you really can't because your sinus is there. But then when I went to the Misch Institute and watched Carl Misch's sinus lifts and the way he's harvesting bone and centrifuging blood and packing it with platelets and all the special things he does, I finally got really bullish about sinus lifts versus 3-unit bridges. So cross-training helps you understand what's going on. Always go, you know, I always think it's fun, you know, at least once a year you should take your staff to McDonald's and ask yourself this simple question. You know, Ray Kroc was the genius of the service industry, just what Einstein was to theoretical physics, what Niels Bohr was to quantum mechanics, what Abraham Maslow was to people. Ray Kroc was to the service sector, and you are in the service sector. You're not manufacturing. And go to McDonald's and ask yourself, why do they have a signature building and you're in a medical dental building? I mean, I can see a Pizza Hut a block away and start changing lanes and slowing down because there it is. I have to drive past your office and reading signs, almost wrecking the car. Why is that? 71% of millionaires in the United States made their money in real estate, and you rent. How come McDonald's has a lit sign? and you have a wooden sign next to a wooden tree. You know, in Iraq today, they would call that a camouflage, okay? Why is your sign a camouflage? And why do they have not only a lit sign, but an internally lit sign? Not some light bulb reflecting off it, which is not clear, but internally lit monument sign right near by the street. Why do they have a name and logo, and you have some last name with 14 letters long? I mean, there are dentists in town where nobody in the world could spell their last name. You couldn't sound it out. A lot of your ancestors came here and chopped their names in half, made them easier. There's no reason you should extend a last name so that your children and the world, the rest of their lives, will have to tell everybody 3 times how to spell it. Why does McDonald's have economic incentives? And why do you think coupons are tacky? If I didn't have that coupon, a lot of them we hand out at the hygiene. Like they'll talk about bleaching, and then we'll hand them a deal. Hey, you know, bleaching, you know, regularly $3.95. Here it is, $1.95, 50% off. Your recare, you got these 1,000 patients that are a year behind or 2 years behind on their recare, and you send them an internal letter that says, bring in this coupon, and this is good for $50 off something major like a root canal, a crown, a denture, partial implant. Here's $25 off something minor like a cleaning, exam, x-ray filling. Why does McDonald's do television advertising? Yet the organized dentistry, the American Dental Association, you know, when have you ever seen an ad? I've always said since day one that, you know, Master Lock, their whole advertising budget was always one ad during the Super Bowl. And they'd buy a 30-second slot, and they'd have slow motion, they'd shoot a lock, and this bullet would go clear through the lock, and it'd bounce around a couple of times, and it was fine. And it said Master Lock, built to last. And you've seen that commercial, I've seen that commercial. They do one commercial a year. I've always thought they should take James Earl Jones and have a glass of water and this upper denture slow motion falling into a glass. And James Earl Jones says, in the United States of America, by age 65, 1 in 3 Americans have no teeth. And then here comes a lower denture falling in there. By age 65, another 1 in 3 have less than half their teeth. Not getting your teeth cleaned at least every 6 months is the first sign of losing your teeth. How many people would turn over and say, Margaret, on Monday, will you make me an appointment? I need to get my teeth cleaned. I mean, it'd just be huge. And yet they can find ways to collect, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars and no advertising because you guys think it's tacky. Yet the word doctor is the Latin word docere, meaning to teach. So sit there and have a realistic market attitude. How come you only want rich patients? You know, and I can call the 80, 90 different districts branch managers for Henry Scheiner Patterson, and whenever I'm traveling around, I run into them. I always ask them the same question. Like here in Phoenix, I'll say, what area, town, or zip code has most of your dentists that are in your account receivables over 60, over 90, delay a payment, not making a payment, going into receivership? And for 20 years, they say, oh yeah, North Scottsdale. And I'll say, what zip codes in town are all the dentists adding an operatory, buying, expanding, growing? And they go, oh yeah, that's easy. It's up in Anthem, Goodyear, Surprise, down in Queen Creek, down in Casa Grande. Man, Casa Grande, there's a couple dentists there. They're all booked up, 6 Wings Vance. They're all expanding and growing. And part of that is you don't have a realistic market attitude. You know, McDonald's makes just as much money in Watts, or the Tenderloin District, as they do in Scottsdale, Beverly Hills, Paradise Valley. Have a realistic market attitude. And if McDonald's can make money off an order of French fries for $1.20, how come you can't make money off a cleaning exam and x-ray for a couple of hundred? Why does McDonald's always start staff with training? I mean, if I get a job at McDonald's, I'll go through a training program. You'll hire a receptionist, and she starts on Monday at 8 o'clock doing her job. And you do all the training. You don't take it serious. These tapes are serious training. Have a trained staff. Staff is not the attitude. Product consistency. Every time you go to McDonald's, a Big Mac is 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, cheese, less onion, seed bun. They'll come into your office, and one time the filling was white, and they come in next time you had a black one, and you didn't show it to them. They get home, and they're wondering, well, how come it's metal? I thought he does the tooth colors. Or PFMs. You know, showing metal. Sometimes it didn't show metal. This one shows metal. Have a consistent staff, a consistent product. Be systems dependent. Have job descriptions for everyone. We put the job descriptions on this DVD series, or you can always email me If you're watching this borrow it from a friend, email me, howard@dentaltown.com. I'll email you all of our staff systems and all that stuff. And be systems dependent, not doctor dependent. I still am amazed at the genius of Ray Kroc and how Ray Kroc is dead. He's cold. He's 6 foot underground. There's probably nothing left but bones. And 35,000 McDonald's get up every morning and make a Big Mac taste the same all around the world. And I've eaten at McDonald's in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, England, Ireland, Puerto Rico, Grand Cayman, Brazil. I've eaten at McDonald's all around the world, and it's the same awesome, standardized experience. Poland, unbelievable. McDonald's consumer convenient hours. You have hours where you know when you set your hours Monday through Friday 8 to 5 and a lunch from 12 to 1 that 1 in 3 Americans could never go there. Rick Mercer, a genius friend of mine, he says, we will take such good care of our patients that they will fear leaving our office and facing a harsher world. L.D. Pinky said it another way. He said 2% of dentists are masters, 8% are adept, 36% are students, have an open mind, they're teachable, they'll take correction without rejection, but 54% are indifferent. And that's so true. In fact, like I say, go to a major lab. Go to a huge lab, Glidewell, any of these large labs, and look at the coming in for a crown. Unbelievable. Did you know, this is a scary statistic. I was right here in Arizona, and it's one of the largest, I'm sorry, it's actually not in Arizona, it's across the border into Mexico. It's one of the largest removable partial denture labs in the world, and 95% of the impressions that come in, 95 out of 100 for a removable partial denture, there's not a prescription, there's no rest points. I mean, the doctor couldn't even take the teeth and make a little divot for a rest seat, didn't even design where he'd want the clasp, just, oh yeah, this guy wants a partial, here it is. And they're like, you know, you don't even give a rat's rear to set them down and make some rest seats to make this partial. You know how nice it is when Grandpa goes to eat and it's this steady, firm partial, and he says, God, I love that partial, it feels so good. And 9+ out of 10 dentists can't even try to do anything. So when LD Pink says 2% are master, he's thinking, you know, is he a little ego? 8% are adept. Is this really fair? And after I walked out of that partial denture lab, and this guy had been running the partial denture lab there for 20 years. It's on a large U.S. Publicly traded dental lab company, and their partial lab is in Mexico, because Mexico actually makes far more partials. It's kind of becoming a lost art in a lot of labs. My friend Sean Keating, he doesn't do partials removable. So it's kind of a lost art, but it's still big in Mexico. Remember, as we go to the richest 40 countries in the world, we run 5 physicians for every dentist. By the time you get to the poorest 40 countries in the world, you run 5 dentists for 1 physician, because in the poor, you're never going to get treated for prostate cancer, breast cancer. You're not going to have open heart surgery, but maybe you'll get that big abscess tooth out. And so, the biggest, best removable partial labs are really not in the 40 richest countries in the world because they don't have enough critical mass. But it just is absolutely shocking that people who have been doing removals for 20 years in this lab say that 95 out of 100 impressions come in without a single rest seat, a single prescription, a single design. They just say, make me a lower partial. I mean, unbelievable. So you got to be better than that. And W. Edwards Deming, one of the geniuses of scientific management, said, in God we trust, all others must use data. He was an American physicist from MIT. He did the Deming management method. This is the genius that Truman sent to Japan to rebuild Japan, and he rebuilt them so well that Japan's is the 2nd richest country in the world. And you know what's amazing? That the United States is the richest economy in the world, Japan's 2nd. Germany's 3rd. And have you ever realized Japan's GDP is twice the size of Germany? So, Japan's 2nd place. But they're really almost, they're 2nd plus because they're still twice as big as number 3, and they base their entire, we have the Tonys and the Oscars, and America has a very perverted culture. Every kid knows who Madonna is or who won an Oscar. I've never been impressed by actors. I think whoever's your favorite actor, you know, a million other people could have played the part and done just fine. But, you know, you go to Japan, they don't have the Oscars. They don't have the Tonys. They don't get carried away in superficial movie stuff that's not even 1% of the GDP. They have the annual Deming Award, and they'll have the Deming Award for the #1 engineering innovation, the #1 electrical engineering innovation. Japan is a country of engineers. We're a country of lawyers. We have 1 million attorneys, and everyone knows who won an Oscar. And here's Japan, and everybody knows who won the annual Deming Award. And every kid in Japan could tell you that, you know, that the 3 basic engineers are, you know, if you plug it in, it's electrical. If it moves, it's mechanical. If it doesn't move like a building, it's civil. And they'll tell you who won the Deming Award for all of Japan in the civil engineering classification, the electrical engineering classification, the civil engineering. I mean, these guys, the country Japan's built on so many different earthquake fault lines. Their last major earthquake, and I think it was Osaka, was a 7.5, and they lost just a handful of buildings. I mean, these guys are unbelievable, and they only listen to measurements, math, engineering. Over 60% of treatment plans are not executed. Do you even measure your treatment plan acceptance rates? Could your staff present treatment better than the dentist? So many times I'll go into an office and you'll look at the treatment plan acceptance rate and it'll be like they're averaging like $380 per new patient. I'll say, you know, that's kind of low. And you're a dentist. I mean, come on, dentists. I mean, these people aren't known for being movie stars, great in sales. You know, you don't go to a room full of dentists and say, there's a room full of a bunch of guys, a lot of personalities. You think more like, here's a room full of accountants, engineers, scientists, physics majors. You remind me more of professors than you do from people at Merrill Lynch. And then I'll sit there and say, look at your staff, and there'll be some Mrs. Personality. Maybe she's assistant 5 years, been a hygienist for 5, and we'll say, you know, she's 10 years, she speaks English, she's hot. Let's let her do the treatment plan presentation. And she'll do it for a week, and her average will be like $1,250. She'll be 3 times higher than the dentist. And then they'll say, well, I just don't think she should. Yeah, I think the doctor should. And I'll say, well, doctor is Latin word docere, meaning to teach. If you don't explain this correctly, if they don't get treatment, they'll have more disease. I mean, if little kids don't get a vaccination, they're going to get disease. The person who's best at explaining the necessity of these vaccinations and sealants and gum disease, these are the best doctors. A doctor is a teacher, and if you're teaching so poorly that only 40% of the treatment plans are accepted and 60% are not, you're not a very good doctor. And why don't you focus on doing dentistry and let this hygienist over here be the real doctor, because she's a great teacher, and any great teacher is a great doctor. And writing too many memos with too many words is so fantastic, especially in a world of email. Who would have guessed that during high school, that the only thing you learned in high school that you use today would be that typing class, which I had a horrible attitude in typing class, because I thought belittled, like as if I was going to be a typewriter, or, you know, I wanted to be a dentist in the 6th grade. I wrote my dental school letter in the 6th grade, University of Missouri, Kansas City, asking what I had to do to become a dentist, and Diane Beard wrote me a letter back and said I had to go to high school. And unbelievable. But basically, when you're explaining treatment, I mean, think about this. Abraham Lincoln delivered his Gettysburg Address 130 years ago. And here's the countries dividing in two. Slavery. 380,000 boys go to their grave. And he goes and explains this to the American people, and he uses 272 words. A bag of Lay's potato chips has 401. So Lincoln could explain why 1/3 of a million boys are going to have to die and entire cities burned down. Yet a bag of Lay's potato chips needs 401 words, and Abe Lincoln needed 272. The IRS form, here's the completely inept government. They're down to 418 words. The average USA Today cover story is 1,200 words. And doctor, you're just sitting there going on and on and on about this interproximal lesion causing irreversible paulitis. You have an anaerobic infection. We'll probably need to be on gentamicin. And then we'll need to do a post-cord. I mean, you're just talking on and on and on. And the patient is like, what is he talking about? No one knows what you're saying. And then I send in your lovely assistant or receptionist or hygienist, and she's the Gettysburg Address. I mean, if he can explain the Civil War in 272 72 words. If you can't explain why you need a crown or a cleaning in 72 words, you're taking yourself way too serious. And this is also why staff meetings are not nearly as efficient as email. When you get all of your staff an email account, and then at home, they can set up what we call a virtual private network. There's an interview with that, and with my Ken Scott, who's our IT programmer. He's the person who created all of Dentaltown. He's been with us since day one on the Dentaltown site, and he's been fantastic. He sets up the staff. They can do a virtual private network. Or he explains it somewhere else in this DVD series. But the long story short is, staff meetings, I never see them start with the minutes of the last meeting. You know, you go to the Fortune 500 and they'll say, okay, here's the minutes of the last meeting. Charlie, you were going to do a customer marketing survey and find out what we need to do regarding our increasing new patients. I never see that. I see a staff meeting. His doctor gives someone $50 to run down to Choke and Puke and get some burgers and fries. The staff all meet and they spend the first half hour sorting out these burgers. This one has mustard. Mine had mayonnaise. This one has pickles. And then they get all their food and then they sit around. They're just all eating and everything. And then they all get done eating. They all pull out their embroidery and they just start to stitch and bitch. Nothing gets done. And then the patients start coming in. Nothing ever gets done. And then when we would do in-office consulting, we'd say, well, you know, what do you think about these problems? Do you think we can solve them this way? And they just, oh, nothing will ever change. Nothing changed around here. We can go to a seminar and doctor will talk. It'll never get implemented. And I don't care if it's your marriage or your staff, it's communication. And email is perfect because in email, you're not rambling on. And furthermore, in a staff meeting, it's like a teacher. You know, when you're teaching and someone's daydreaming, you know, they don't hear a word you're saying. When you communicate to someone, you need eye contact because when they're looking eye to eye, they're taking information. But as soon as they break eye contact, now they're processing. You got to think of that little hourglass coming up. I notice my boys, my wife, it's very cute where you'll be talking to them and they'll be making eye contact, and then all of a sudden they break eye contact. Some of my wife bites her nail. Ryan always looks down his thumb and he touches his thumb and he comes back and goes, Dad. And when they break eye contact, you have to shut up, stop, because they're not taking in a word you say, and then freeze and wait. Now they're processed. Now they're going to come back with an attribute, and what they say is what they're keying in. So you're telling somebody they got a broken teeth, need a root canal, all this, and then they break eye contact. Stop, shut up. You've already sold it. And then they're going to come back up to you and say, and it's going to be easy. It's going to be, will my insurance pay? How much is it? Will it hurt? Are you going to do it today? When could you do it? What's it going to look like? I mean, the attributes in dentistry, they're not even 10 of them, but you're rambling on. You're not even looking at their eye. The patient's over here. You're pointing to the x-ray. You got to maintain eye contact. And that's what I like about emails is a staff meeting, you could be talking, and your assistant can be thinking, oh, tonight I got to pick up my daughter by 6. She's thinking, her mind's somewhere else. You're rambling on. Then you want to know why she's not involved. But email, you're forced to choose words. Because you hate to type, you're more likely to do a Gettysburg Address with 272 words than to ramble on for half an hour that you do in a staff meeting. It forces you to choose words. You can have someone proofread it. You can spell check it. You can look at it. You can email it out. Well, people don't get their email when they don't want to. They don't get the mail at their home when they don't want to. They get their mail at the mailbox when they want to. They'll say, hey, I want to go check the mail. I find it amazing that my wife reminds me that in 19 years of marriage, I've never once got the mail. I don't know what that means, but they go get their email when they want to. They have a cancellation, they get in work early, or they're waiting for something to happen. Oh, I want to check my email. And then they might see a funny joke from someone else. They're in the right mood. And then they get your email about something you're thinking about the hygiene department or how you want to do recall or something, whatever. And then they're looking at an email. So it goes right to their thought, and they can answer back what they're actually thinking. Whereas if you stood in front of them, you have all these natural biases, heuristics, he's my boss, or he's mad, or she's happy, or I don't want to offend this person, or whatever. When you have why do humans have 43 groups of muscle contractions in their face? Because the eyebrow, the inflection, the tone, the pitch, all these things distort communication. Lots of things you do with your face is telling other people, don't argue with me. Go along with what I'm saying. Polar bears, we talked about earlier. Polar bears can't smile because they don't need to. They don't need anybody to help them. They can kill and eat anything that moves in the polar ice fields. Humans are a social animal, and they know that if you, for the last 4 million years, if the group of apes ran them out, they'd be carried off and eaten by hyenas the first night. They need everybody to get along. They're a social animal like bumblebees and ants and humans. And this email is so great because it neutralizes all these heuristics and biases. All these decision-making errors built into our biology are diffused, and email is the greatest thing. And on our office, we have these little folders that have all of our job descriptions, everything they need to know. So it's the best form of communication. So get every single person in your office today an email account. I still lecture all the time. And time after time I'll say, okay, how many offices are there? And there's usually about 100 offices at an average seminar. How many of you have an email account for each person? It's only maybe 5-6% of the hands go up. And you know, another thing about email is a lot of times my staff, the most brilliant emails they send me are evenings or weekends. And I always tease my vice president, Lori Zalowski, who's my right-hand man, and I couldn't be anywhere near I am today without her. And she's always telling me, when she has this great idea, I always say, well, when did you think of that? And it's always a Sunday morning when taking a shower. I don't know what it is at her house about Sunday mornings taking a shower. I almost want to put a hidden camera in there and just see what's going on. And then she'll get on the email and she'll say something brilliant. Same with my programmer, Ken Scott. And this is allowing your staff to communicate when they're at home, relaxed, and can really tell you their honest opinion about this policy. So get everyone an email account today. Thank you.
The virtue auctoritas, spiritual authority, the sense of one's social standing built up through experience. Each day, you should do nothing of which you're not proud. Every act that you do that you're not proud of slowly erodes your self-esteem. Howard and I are always explaining this to our children because little habits that you do that you're not really proud of can build up over time, and it makes it easier to do big things you're not proud of. And I think that all people, and in this case people in a dental office, need to keep this in mind when they're doing their treatment planning and even doing their continuing education, just to make sure that everything you're doing in their office is something that you are proud to be doing and would have no concerns with other dentists watching you. So Howard has great spiritual authority and great ethics in his treatment planning, and I'm proud to introduce him to talk about this.
Well, thank you, baby. So the virtue, I'm not going to pronounce it, Judith. How do you pronounce it? Auctoritas, spiritual authority. This concerns me a lot. I've watched dentistry from when I graduated in 1987 to 2005, and I have seen a lot of social erosion in the way consumers view dentists. A lot of this has been from the cosmetic industry. Once again, you know, just because a patient wants a cosmetic procedure doesn't mean they need a cosmetic procedure. Some of these people have psychological issues, and some of these people need close counseling, some need psychologists, some need psychiatrists. But the top cosmetic procedures are a nose job is number one at 356,000 of them in 2003, according to the American Society of Plastic Surgeons. Liposuction was number two at 320,000. Breast augmentation was number three at 254,000. Eyelid surgeries were 246,000. Facelifts were 128,000. Botox injections. Now we go from surgical procedures to minimally invasive procedures. And now look at this. Since they're minimally invasive, look how much more there are. A nose job is a surgery. They had 356,000, whereas a Botox injection was nearly 3 million. Liposuction was 320,000, but a minimally invasive chemical pill was right at $1 million. Breast augmentation was $250,000, whereas microdermabrasion was $1 million. Eyelid surgery was 246,000. Laser hair removal, that's what I had done, and just kidding. And that was 623,000. A facelift's 128,000. Yet collagen injections were over $500,000 at 576,000. So the main thing I want to show you here is that minimally invasive procedures drastically far outnumber surgical procedures. This is what Bob Ivson so eloquently is trying to point out to the industry, that, you know, his no prep Serenate veneers, his lumineers, where you simply take an impression and he makes veneers that are the thickness of contact lens, and you just glue those to the front of the teeth. There's no numbing, no drilling, no shaving off all the enamel, no condemning these teeth to retreatment. They're minimally invasive, and patients get excited when they learn they don't have to have their teeth filed down. Also with your fees, I think it's, you know, you start with cost. You don't do cost plus profit equals price, because your price might be too high. You have to start with the price that sells this procedure minus the profit you need to arrive at a budget. Now, come on, a facelift is the most expensive at $5,283 on average. Breast augmentations are running on average $3,375. Nose jobs are $3,188. Eyelid surgeries $2,525. Liposuction $2,224. For a total national expenditure in the year 2003 of over $8 billion. That's 8 with 9 zeros behind it. And then someone will ask you, well, how much are veneers? And you'll say, well, it depends. You want to do 6, 8, or 10? And they'll say, well, how much are they a piece? And you say, well, they're $750. Well, $750 times 10 is $7,500. Do you think that is absurd, that a facelift is $5,000 and veneers are $7,500? That someone would really want to have 10 teeth done for $7,500 when they get a breast jaw augmentation for $3,375, or a nose for $3,000, or eyes for $2,500, or liposuction for $2,200, and you want $7,500 for some teeth? You know, you should sit there and realize that the facelift is the most expensive procedure at $5,000. Well, at the very most, you should say, oh, well, if you want a smile lift, we'll do the veneers for $4,950. That's pricing it at a facelift. Or you could say, we'll do it at $2,950 to price it at a boob job. Or we'll do it at $2,950 for price it at a nose job, or $2,500. So, you know, you have huge scales of economy doing 6, 8, 10 teeth at a time in one appointment. I mean, it's not like when you say it's $750, yeah, you can see $750 a tooth if you did one tooth at a time, where you had to set up a room, seat the patient, numb them up, do the procedure, take an impression, make a temp, yada yada yada. But when you're just simply doing them all at once, you have huge scales of economy, and so you should tell them the price. You know, they wouldn't do a lot of facelifts if every time someone called and said, well, how much the facelift? Oh, well, it depends. I mean, you know, are we going to cut in front of the ear? Are we going to go above the hairline? Are we going to do this? You know, we really can't tell you. And we'll have to add all these things up. We're going to arrive at some number. It might be $7,000, $8,000, $9,000. No, that's the objection. The objection is, how much is this? Mom already wants a facelift, or she wouldn't be calling, asking you how much it is. Price is the big barrier in economics. In fact, if you have some children and some of them aren't very smart, tell them to be economics majors, because when you take an economics class, 80% of all the answers are price. I mean, there's only so many ways you can ask the question. Price is so paramount in getting people to decide to buy. And when we sit there and say, you know, the most important thing for a facelift they start with is the price. When you say $5,283, when we have financing, it's this much down, this much a month, whatever. If they can get over that, they're going to have it done. And then they call you, and you can't tell them. You say, well, you know, I don't know. It depends on if you need 6 or 8 or 10. And plus, you know, you're a class 2 division 2, so we might have to do root canals on your lateral incisors. Like, what? Root canals? I want to have a fancy smile. Now he's talking root. He might have to do root canals. Just tell them. And how long does it take you to do a root canal and 2 lateral incisors? I mean, if that isn't the easiest root canal on the planet, what is? And cosmetic procedures are growing fast, but I think it's growing fast because they start with price minus profit equals budget. And these plastic surgeons know how important keeping the price down and keeping financing available. That's why we've gone from about 400,000 cosmetic procedures in '92 to over 2 million a year in 2003. I think Discus Dental, I think Bob Dorfman has been very instrumental in promoting a lot of these deals with his Extreme Makeover series. Cosmetic surgeries look deeper than that. Females get 86% of cosmetic surgeries. Again, females see beauty as a source of power, or males are more into money, title, rank. Also, when females get cosmetic surgeries, 45% of them will go on to get another one. We also find the same with tattoos. You'll find very few women who have one tattoo. They start with one, and then half of them go on to get another one, another one, another one. 45% of women who get cosmetic surgery are repeat patients. 32 get multiple procedures done at one time. The United States isn't even the king of these plastic surgeries. Actually, Switzerland is the highest at 2% of the population has had a cosmetic surgery. Spain's at 1%. Greece and Australia are about 0.75%. Australia, Mexico, Argentina, Finland, Norway, and Canada all have more plastic surgeries per person than the United States. So again, Switzerland 2%. Think of all the countries that do more than we do. Canada, Norway, Finland, Argentina, Mexico, Australia, Greece, Spain, Switzerland. Now, a lot of Americans know that the average GDP per person in the United States drastically exceeds that of Mexico. But Mexico actually has more cosmetic procedures per capita. Go look at this source on nationmaster.com. But the bottom line is, it's not about money. The bottom line is Mexican girls really value cosmetic procedures. They're really into it. They're more into it than American women. We asked dentists, we do a lot of polling on Dental Town, and we polled 637 dentists and asked them, do you believe adding a laser to your practice would bring in new patients? 54% said yes, 46% said no. Rod Kurthy, when lasers came out, all these dentists talking about lasers, and I kept wanting to look at the research, like, well, what are they doing in periodontal curettage? Or, what are the periodontists saying? And I wasn't finding much there. And do I really need something for tooth structure? When I got air abrasion, I've got drills. But Rod Kurthy was showing me how powerful it is in marketing. He's out there in California with 5 dental schools, a dentist on every corner, and he works lasers into all of his marketing campaign. And it's just been an incredible boom for him. He doesn't take any insurance. He has $1 million practice. When we ask dentists, what benefits are you looking for most in a laser? 47% say improve patient care, and that makes me feel good. 29% say expanding the number and types of dental procedures. Only 13% say for reduced anesthesia, and 11% say marketing and practice expansion. When we ask them, are you concerned about the learning curve generally associated with laser dentistry, especially BioLace, that's the market lion share laser in dentistry, 63%, 2/3 are not concerned about the learning curve, only 1/3 are. But we ask them this, if lasers were more affordable, would you be likely to invest in one? 60% said yes. 25%, so they're saying they're price elastic, price having a very elastic effect on demand. 25% were price inelastic, saying no, that wouldn't affect them at all. 15% already own one. So if 15 out of 100 dentists surveyed on Dental Town, remember Dental Town's the cream of the crop. Most dentists, when they go home from work, they've had enough dentistry, they don't want to hear anymore, they pop a beer, watch ESPN, tune out, they don't want any more of this. Who are these dentists that go get on Dental Town for an hour, several times a month? We got about 2,000 dentists on there every night. About 22,000 different dentists per month will get on there. Total U.S. pet industry expenditures is $35 billion a year. In '94, it was $17 billion. It's grown to $35 billion. I've been shocked and amazed. When I was little, big Catholic families in Kansas, even if you had money, it just wasn't, they just didn't seem to spend them on their pets. I remember when I was little, I was about 10 years old, my favorite little dog, Nippy, went from about 10 pounds to 30 pounds in about a week. Dad was out of town, one of his restaurants. Mom said, when Dad comes home, we'll take him to the vet. Dad comes home, this big old Lincoln Town car. He's got all kinds of money. We take him to the vet. The vet examines Nippy, comes out, tells my dad, Nippy's going to need a surgery, and it's going to be $1,800. And my dad leans over, kisses Nippy, and says, Nippy, you're going to see Jesus. And the vet said, it costs $50 to euthanize him, and my dad said he'd take care of himself for 25 cents. But today, that's not acceptable. Today, it's an animal. It practically has rights. It does have rights, legal rights. I've even been surprised at our cat. We have 3 cats, 6 turtles. What do we have? 4 children, 2 bunnies, 3 cats, 6 turtles. and our cat went and got in a fight and did something to her jaw. And I can't tell you how weird I felt writing a check to the vet for $1,500 for jaw surgery. And, for a cat. Can you imagine back in 1950 trying to get your mom to spend $1,500 on a cat? Personal savings as a percent of personal income has plummeted. 1960, from the 60 to 75, personal savings as a percent of income grew from 6 to 9%. And then from 1975 to 2004, it went to 0. In fact, for the last 2 years, from 2002 to 2005, consumers have overall combined have spent more money than they earned. With low interest rates, they've driven up the most record levels of debt. So the point I'm trying to make here is people aren't rational. You show them a way to finance a big cosmetic dental case, and they'll pay for it, even though it's insane, they don't have the money. You say that people work paycheck to paycheck. Now they work paycheck to debt. I mean, it's a good thing we don't have debtors' prisons anymore, or about 25% of America would be locked up. There are more pets than people in the U.S. There's 377 million pets versus 280 million people. 62% of U.S. households own a pet. 46% of households own more than one pet. 1 million U.S. dog and cat owners have purchased health insurance for their pets. And all the money spent on pets in America would provide basic health care for the entire continent of Africa. And right now, the entire continent of Africa, not even 10% get health care. And the United States spends more money on their pets and that could provide all of health care for Africa. So the point I'm making is what people spend on is completely irrational. But the point I was making on Botox versus facelifts is that minimally invasive procedures are paramount. That's why bleaching is paramount. We use the Rembrandt bleaching. I like the Rembrandt bleaching because the light can substitute as a light-cured composite. I mean, it's a very strong arc light. Gordon Christians told me that he's tested the sapphire light from Denmark multiple times at CRA, and it cures 3 millimeters of 5 millimeters of lightly shaded composite in 3 seconds. And Gordon and I were lecturing together at a format in San Diego, and I said, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" And he said, "I know, it sounds crazy, but it's true, it works." And so that light's exciting to me. Bleaching is just like your hygiene. I mean, the dentist isn't going in there doing any of this. This is all assistant procedures. There's the blue crystal sapphire light. It looks magical if you turn out the lights in the room and turn that on. It looks pretty high-tech, even though there's no research I've seen that makes me believe that the light has anything to do with anything. To me, the research clearly shows that the only two determinate variables that statistically are relevant in whitening your teeth are the concentration of bleach and the time that's left on. If you want the teeth to get more white, leave it on twice as long. 20% is more powerful than 15%, which is more powerful than 10%. And a lot of that sensitivity is from bleaching is because these patients didn't have cleanings and exams beforehand, which they should. And we should tell them, if you don't floss your teeth, in between your teeth are inflamed, that bleach is going to get in there. It's going to be very sensitive. Afterwards, you're going to be sore. It actually does clean up the gums, though. I mean, it's hard to have gingivitis after you've been doing bleaching trays for a week. There are people who will spend time to save money and people who will spend money to save time. Those are two different markets. This is what Arno Penzias says, who's a Nobel laureate and used to be Bell Labs chief scientist in 1998. And basically what he's saying is, it reminds me when I was little. When we were little, Mom would make a cake from scratch. Today, if I want to hide something from my wife, I simply put it in the oven. People didn't want to make it from scratch. And so then Betty Crocker comes out for, $3 a box for a cake mix. And interesting thing about the cake mix, she had powdered eggs in the original cake mix, and it didn't sell very well because Mom used to make it from scratch, and now she's just pouring something in a bowl, adding water, and stirring it, and she didn't feel like she was baking it. So they actually, after they had dismal sales for a few years, they took out the powdered eggs, where Mom would have to pour it in and add 2 eggs, and then milk, and then stir, and then Mom felt more like she was actually cooking something, and then sales took off. So isn't that amazing? Where, you had to hang on to the past. You can't take them too far in the future, or they disconnect from their roots in the past. And so they had to take out the eggs. Well, then the next generation comes along and says, well, I'm not going to make a Betty Crocker cake mix. I got more time than money. I'm going to go to the grocery store and the bakery and get a cake for 15 bucks. It's the same thing in birthday parties. We were little, Mom would have a birthday party, make a cake from scratch, maybe make a pizza from scratch. Today, moms go to Chuck E. Cheese pizza, dump 50, 60, 100 bucks on pizza and a cake and pop and fun and value. The point I'm making here is the take-home bleach versus in office. People don't want to do their bleaching at home. When I was little, I grew up with 5 sisters, and seemed like every weekend someone would go get some hairdo kit and cook one of my sister's heads in the kitchen sinks, all these chemicals, and be burning and screaming and crying. And then after a 3-hour permanent, it was always the same thing no matter what happened. When it's all done, she'd look in the mirror and they'd start crying and get mad and run and hide in the room or whatever. And you knew it was always a nightmare. Well, today, almost no women do their own hair in their kitchen sink or have their sister, girlfriend, or neighbor do it. Today, almost every woman goes down and has it professionally applied. It's the same thing as bleaching. When bleaching started out, it was take-home trays and take impressions, make trays, go home and do it. They don't want to go home and do it. They want to come in. They could go home and do their nails, so they have a pedicure. They could go home and cut their toenails. They have a pedicure. They want to come in your office for an hour, and, you know, my rooms cost me about $85 an hour to run. So I do in-office bleaching for $185. I make a $100 bill. Mom doesn't have to go home and do it. It's full service. She likes it. It's very profitable. It's affordable. It's fun. There's no insurance involved. Customers want information, choices, and control in a convenient, courteous, professional retail setting. They want service. This is the only way today's consumer can reach self-mastery. Now, the definition of an entrepreneur is simply anyone who moves their limited resources of money, time, and capital from a lower return to a higher return. If grandma goes and cashes her CD earning 4% and buys a new CD earning 5%, grandma's an entrepreneur because she's moving her money from lower returns to higher returns. So, you know, these trays, what we do is when we do the in-office bleaching, first thing we do is take impressions. We give that to the instrument sterilization lady named Loriana. And Loriana goes and she does the instruments and she'll go make the trays. The trays are just free. They come in and pay, I'm sorry, not $195 for in-office bleaching. And then they paint on the gum dam and put on the bleach, put on the lights, and they'll refresh the bleach every 15 minutes. But when they're done, we give them the take-home trays, because what the take-home trays does is a lot of people do the in-office bleaching, and we find that 20, 30% I would say, oh, I wasn't very impressed. I think I was hoping for a little bit more. Well, now we got rid of that complaint, because as they're all done, we say, now, here for a gift is take-home trays. Here's a bottle of bleach. If you'd like to continue whitening even more, here's the trays, here's the bleach, because what will happen is their desire for whiter teeth versus the pain and discomfort of actually having to do this and walk around bleaching their mouth. And so they'll eventually lose motivation to keep wearing trays and bleach and say, yeah, it looks good enough. So it's a really good mix. And Rod Kurthy has a great, fantastic book that's a must-read on bleaching. And he showed me one thing that was so imperative, and that is making the tray is everything. I mean, a great impression, no bubbles, a great suck-down seal, trimming the tray is everything. If you get a tray that's just a tray, I mean, something that in dental school they just say, wow, that bleaching tray gets an A. The bleaching is unbelievable better. But an ill-fitting tray, a loose tray, that doesn't have a nice seal, the tray is everything. And I thought it was mostly the bleach. And Rod Kurthy taught me I was so wrong. It is the tray, the tray, the tray. And when you have a central sterilization person who can take the time to really focus and really make a perfect tray, you get far, far superior results. When you get these fun cases of orthodontics and bleaching, take lots of photographs, especially with digital photography. In the old days, you would take all these pictures, then you do the case, and then you go have the film develop and you get it back and say, oh, God, I blew that shot, and oh, my gosh, and you took it wrong. It was too dark, too light, it was too late. Patient's already been done. It's been altered. They're out the door. Digital photography is so nice. You can take a picture. You can instantly look, oh, yeah, this is exactly what I want. You can go plug it into your computer instantly, blow it up on a 17-inch monitor. Oh, yeah, that's perfect. You can crop it, Photoshop it, do whatever you want to do to it. And then you take those before and afters, and when you get an attractive lady on a before and after picture, you know, and all the differences up in the front of the mouth where it's not hidden in the back of the mouth, then take that, and that's what we use on our advertisings. You know, we hand our local movie theater three 35mm slides for almost nothing, and they put it in their 24 AMC theaters. And we run this one before and after. You deserve ortho and bleaching. Today's Dental, 893 Care, 48th Street in Elliott in the Safeway Plaza. Now remember, not many people go to a movie theater with pen and pencils to take notes, so you have to make this information stick in their mind. So we're not going to waste any time with Howard, Eugene, Fran, DDS, FAGD. Nobody's going to remember that. 893, 1223, I don't know, but you know, if they're coming to a movie theater in my neighborhood, their phone number probably starts with 893, and when the last number is Care or Gums or 7777 or 4, you know, something easy, and then give them a descriptive. 48th Street in Elliott in the Safeway Plaza, and then, oh yeah, I remember seeing that logo in the Safeway. Oh, I know where they're at. And or market differentiation, you deserve to bleach your teeth, show before and afters, you know, differentiate your work, practice differentiation among your staff, practice differentiation among your dental work instead of a bunch of amalgams, composites. I haven't placed an amalgam since 1990. I only did them from 87 to 90. I have not done a single amalgam in 15 years, and it has nothing to do with being half mercury. I don't buy any of those mercury arguments. Mercury in the mouth is an insoluble salt where mercury is bond to silver, zinc, copper, tin. You swallow amalgam, 3 days later it passes in a pan. Mercury that's getting absorbed is free ethyl and methyl mercury in the ocean. The reason the mercury content in the ocean has gone up from about 1 part per million to 4 parts per million in the last 50 years is because America derives half of its electricity from coal, most of it from Montana and Wyoming. And they sit there and they burn this coal, and the smokestack goes up, and mercury is in the smoke. And then since 70% of the earth is covered by ocean, when this sediment comes down, 7 out of 10 cubic feet of this smoke is going to come down the ocean, and that's the source of mercury. And mercury in the ocean is free ethyl and methyl mercury. It's heavier than water. It sinks to the bottom. And who goes and eats this? Bottom dwellers like shrimp and lobster and oysters. And mercury in tuna and swordfish has gone up consistently. Mercury concerns are from burning coal instead of something clean like nuclear. You know, France gets 50% of its electricity from nuclear, and we get 10%. The Earth pumps out 83 million barrels of oil a day, and the United States consumes 23 million of those. We have 5% of the world's population and burn 25% of all the oil. And most of those countries, a lot of them are using oil for electricity. As far as oil made to gasoline, the United States consumes 54% of all the gasoline made in the world. We are a crazy country addicted to cars, and when we ever get an oil shock, our country is going to not be ready for it. That's why I say buy real estate downtown, because someday when the gasoline model isn't going to work, all those people from the suburbs are going to be moving downtown in groves, and those old warehouses in the bad district of town are going to be turned into $100,000 and $200,000 and $300,000 condominium lofts in about a New York second. When you get into cosmetic dentistry, the first thing you got to understand is light. And no one really knows what light is. It's a photon. It travels 186,000 miles a second, 5.9 trillion miles in a year. We know it's attracted to gravity. That's what Hubble showed us. Hubble showed us that when light goes in between two huge galaxies, it bends towards a larger galaxy. But the main thing you have to realize is that when you look at teeth here, lots of dentists would see this and they think it's the metal from the crown. It's not the metal from the crown. It's simply you're looking in the window of a house with no lights on. There's no translucency. So when you sit there and do metal-free restorations, the tooth is still up there. It's just that since light's flying through, it's illuminated, and tooth structure is light yellow. You see it all day long. So also when you're dealing out amalgams and you see these dark areas here, that's these heavy stains. That's actually the point of contact. So make a mental note of that in your occlusion. I show this case because, you know, who sets your standards? Dentist, other dentist, Dental lecturers are your customers. You know, I was one of the early graduating classes at LVI with Dickerson back when he used to have Hornbrook and Larry Rosenthal, and I spent several weeks down there learning a heck of a lot. And I love Bill for all he's done, for all the cosmetic information he's taught me. Same with Larry Rosenthal, who let me spend days in his practice. Larry Rosenthal is another great man. We both have a son named Eric, the same age. But Larry was smarter than me, stopped at 1. I went on to have a Greg, Ryan, and Zach. And I'm just kidding. But, you know, they would all tell me about stain, and they were all excited about putting in all this stain and how natural it looked to match the natural stain in the tooth. And, you know, I got into it. I learned it all. But see, I'm not doing dentistry on Dickerson, Hornbrook, and Rosenthal. And I'm doing it on Mom. And when I'm done, I always show her a mirror. And she'd look at the mirror and she'd say, well, what's all that brown stuff in it? And I said, oh, that's natural fake brown stain to match all the natural brown stain in your teeth. And she'd say, well, I don't want stain. I mean, my gosh, they get their fingernails are an inch long. When they put red lipstick on, no one thinks, wow, your lips are red. They know artificial. Women don't have a problem with fake. They don't have a problem with artificial. You know, they want chalk white teeth. And dentists are artificially programmed on how they look at teeth. Consumers look at teeth naturally. Dan Fisher, founder and president of Ultradent, what an unbelievable man. I've gone to so many of his 2-day courses up in a suburb of Salt Lake City. I call him Dan the Man Fisher. He's so approachable. Call him up. He'll take the call. Email him. He'll answer it. But go down there and take his 2-day hands-on course. You'll learn so much. But here's a classic example. Here's crowns that aren't necessarily attractive. They're just all porcelain. This is years ago. And look at the tooth up here, how it's all yellow because it's being illuminated. But look at all this dark because this is a porcelain to metal bridge. And it's just all dark. Here's the best example. Here's shining light on a natural tooth, all porcelain crown. And here's shining light through a crown with porcelain fused to gold. And that gold is not translucent, and that's what's causing all those dark lines. And remember, I call it the aesthetic health compromise. When you're a man and you come in at any age, I know you're a man. You're 27% more muscle mass than a woman. When you smile, you don't even show your teeth, let alone your gums. And I know you got a stronger bite, you got more muscle mass, you're going to break things. And I'll go porcelain to gold, usually cap tech in the front. I think it's very beautiful, but I want that strength of metal. But when Mom comes in, that's a whole different animal. This is someone who has 27% less muscle. She'll smile. Not only will she show all her teeth, she'll show her gums. She's always looking in the mirror, plucking her eyebrows, putting on lipstick, eyeliner, pierced ears. I mean, this is a whole nother beast. And there we take up the aesthetic health compromise to exotic levels of making all of their work, you know, Empress, for PFMs or Serenade. And she wants it to look just perfect. And, you know, this Empress veneer porcelain material is so translucent on the edge. They love it. And like I say, they love it. And if they love it, that's all that matters. So thank you very much.